to Property Pros, where we make sense of the property world from the professionals who know it best. I am Jacque Elias, the Director and CEO of Futurebound, and I am here today with Cassandra Palmer. She is the owner of Yes, Let's Property. She is a property manager. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thanks, Jacque.
That's right. Let us know how property managers fit into the property puzzles. It's more about managing rental properties, right?
That's correct. Yes. Hi, Jacque. So my job really is to maximise the return for a significant investment. Property is a significant investment for your clients, and minimise the risk wherever I can. I mean, that's a short answer.
Right.
One of the primary reasons a property management company is engaged is to create that buffer, that professional buffer for the owner of a property, the investor owner. I've actually done an analysis of my customer base, and many of them aren't overseas or out of town owners. They're actually Wellington based, and they are professional people that realise the value of their income being earned and the significant time that they need to dedicate to properties will take them away from their own ability to continue on with their vocation and their professions.
Right, so they're mostly in town because you're Wellington based.
That's correct.
And so your customers, your landlords are in Wellington. Do you have out of town though as well? So as long it's more based on where the property is.
Absolutely out of towners. I've had overseas investors that I've worked with for even a decade, and I've never actually physically met them face to face.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. And there's been the occasions when they've come into town and it's like a blind date. We meet up for coffee, and I have never met these people before, and we've had a business relationship for several years.
Wow, That is pretty awesome. And how do you provide that value? You were talking about managing the risk for the property owner. How do you do that?
Due diligence. You can't say that often enough. It's the vetting, the screening process of tenants. It's the inspections, which usually are driven by insurance policies. The insurers set quarterly, typically, inspection frequency, and those are sort of like a stitch in time saving nine. I always feel like I'm forever a negative Nelly almost, because I'm looking for property defects. I'm looking for things that perhaps could explode into a bigger problem down the future. Blocked drains, guttering that's clogged. Those are just some of the due diligences we show in our operations, in our day-to-day operations of doing property inspections.
Yeah.
How important they are.
And I remember when we met earlier, you were talking about really kind of being that in-between person, keeping that relationship with the tenants, but also really you are backing the landlord. So kind of you're in that middle place.
Absolutely.
Middle awkward place. Exactly.
Again, as I say, it's that professional buffer. Those professionals, I mean, you can imagine sitting there in a steering committee meeting, and then they don't want to receive those telephone calls from a tenant to discuss their rent arrears or to discuss their rookie tap. So it is that professional buffer. I will become that first port of call for a tenant on any occasion, and the professional buffer of being that first liaison, that point of contact for a tenant.
That's pretty awesome. And kind of one of the big worries, when you're thinking about doing investment property, as actually I am, we're looking to get into that. And so one of the things is, okay, so what if something goes wrong with the property and something needs to be fixed? So it could be from the tenants doing something, right? It's always the fear. Or could just be something happens with the property, and needs to be fixed. So what is your role when something like that happens?
Again, it's that first port of call. I've got a good team of tradespeople behind me, absolute professionals, and if they're not up to standard, I really don't engage with them. And I liaise with them. I send through work orders and liaise with the tradespersons to get into the property, to do the work in a professional standard and a timely manner, and progress through. It's project management to a degree, checking that those works have been done, and if necessary, inspecting that they've been done properly. Again, that's one of the buffers that I provide. This is my day-to-day operation of being involved in property almost 7 days a week, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're not footing the bill for the actual fixes and all of that, right? Or is it, how does that work? Like who?
Right, with our business operations, I engage those tradespeople. They come through, the invoicing comes through our accounts. We maintain a trust account for the purpose of collecting rent and making disbursements to both to, obviously the owners want their money, and disbursements again to the creditors or the contractors. We don't load any of those invoices.
Right.
I think it's really important. That's our business model, and our business model, because we don't want to deter work and maintenance being done, and we don't want those lags of time for having a tenant attended to was those necessary things that need to be done.
Right. That's awesome. So as far as legislation, because I know that one of the worries is, okay, so what if there's a dispute? What if we have to go to the tribunal? What are the laws? How can I get in trouble? What would you say, what's going on in that area right now?
Right, we're on the eve of this August 4th, and we're on the eve of Government Select Committee passing some reforms to the Residential Tenancies Act. Quite unpopular with landlords and owners at the moment. The implications for some of the legislative changes really do strongly. I'm going to get on my soapbox now, but they
That's
do.
Okay, let's tell us about it. I think there a lot of the viewers are property investors, and this is a hot topic right now, isn't it?
It is absolutely. It can change the face of landlording in New Zealand as we know it. The exemplary damages and penalties for landlords, those naive landlords that don't understand legislative change and the legislations as they stand now, those exemplary damages and penalties will increase. So there's more care to be taken in making sure a landlord does his job properly as being a landlord. And it is a business. Landlording is a business. When I meet a new client, I always say, hey, you're now in business. As a landlord, you've got to observe, obviously strongly, the Residential Tenancies Act, but you've also got to observe Workplace Health and Safety, Consumer Law, Fair Trading Act, Privacy Act.
We're not trying to scare you off of it.
No, which is where I come in again as a professional, observing those as a business owner as well,
and keeping up with what's happening, right? And so that's why, and a lot of people, have a very, I can do it, can-do attitude. I can manage my own property, but in particular, when you want to have multiple properties, it starts to get really hairy. If it's your day job, that's something different, but a lot of people want to keep working and build wealth with property, and so having that property manager who is keeping their eyes on the legislation, like all those things that you said, I think is such a huge value that you do provide, and kind of covering bums.
Also, I subscribe as a property management company. I subscribe to various agencies and resources for information, training, and to keep abreast of those changes. And I've been a property manager for 20 years. The last, say 5 to 7, there's been a lot of change in landlording, and a lot of change in that the nuances of running investment property business. So again, as I say, we've got the resources on hand. We subscribe to a variety of agencies for that information and those resources.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, what tips would you have for property investors? Let's say any common mistakes that you notice that people might be making that you want to get on your soapbox again for.
I'm conferring with somebody at the moment who is looking at building 4-bedroom townhouses in a very small footprint of land. And I'm actually, my advice would be perhaps, given it's a great family little cul-de-sac with schooling and kindergartens very close and close to town, but on such a small footprint of land, I would suggest to her that 3-bedroom properties would be a better option. The larger families would expect a bigger footprint of land around them. These days though, having said that, 4 bedrooms are proving very popular with the new work from home people, and people are looking for that office space.
That's right.
Property.
Yeah. So it sounds like thinking about who's going to move into that property because obviously, when you're a property investor, you're trying to maximize, your return. But if it doesn't work for the people that you might think will move in there, then you can't maximize that return anyway, right? So it has to be something that's going to work for someone to live.
It's a number crunching, isn't it? As an investor, checking out what that yield is, taking the emotion out of, and property is emotive. And providing property and accommodation and rental property for tenants is emotive. We're putting people in homes. But for an investor, taking that emotion out and looking at the bottom line, checking the yield, assessing their figures, really.
Yeah. Awesome.
And engaging great people like Futurebound to do those number crunching for them.
I didn't tell her to say that.
Good advice.
Absolutely, and that's why I see property managers as kind of like a cousin of mortgage advisors and people who kind of work in this property world, because having an expert on your side, it really pays off. Speaking of pay, I haven't asked you the hot question of how much does it typically cost to engage a property manager?
Well, I know that we charge commission, and that's commission on rent received, which means no rent. We're incentivized to keep those rents and rent revenue flowing. Okay. No rent means no commission for our company. We've chosen that model. There are some agencies there that have flat fees, and I do believe as an investor, don't be price driven on selecting a professional. Those cheaper operators may not deliver. Again, the bottom line too is ask the questions about some hidden fees, administration costs. Do they charge for those property inspections? Are there statement fees, admin fees? And there's quite often, that figure to start with, there may be some hidden extras.
Right,
in there.
they're gonna get their money in there somewhere, right? Because it does cost to actually run the business. So cheaper may not actually be cheaper.
No, not at all. Penny wise and a pound foolish, is that the saying?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cassandra, for coming here today and letting us all know all about property managers. We're going to put your website up, so if anyone wants to contact you, if they're within the Wellington area. But again, obviously, if you don't have a property in Wellington and you cannot use Cassandra at Yes Let's Property, definitely it is worth your while to find a good property manager. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.
Thank you.
For more financial tips, advice, and education, subscribe to us on YouTube, and don't forget to hit that notification bell.